Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidil Ashrafil Anbiya wal Mursaleen. Sayyidina Muhammadi wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een. Amma ba'd. Fa'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Now, just a quick recap of the topic which we have been looking at the past few weeks. The past few weeks we have been looking at the minor signs of Day of Judgment, those things which will happen, which will take place before the end of time. Now, there is another hadith which can be found in Sunan al-Tirmizi, narrated by Hazrat Abu Sa'id al-Khudri anhu, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said, La taqumu as-sa'a, that Qiyamah and Day of Judgment would not take place hatta tukallima as-siba'u al-insa, until a time comes when wild animals would speak with humans. So one of the minor signs of Day of Judgment before the end of time, that a time will come when wild animals like your tigers, like your deers, like your zebras, animals which live in the wild, which live in the jungle, which live in the forest, they will speak with human beings. And this is also mentioned in the Holy Quran as well. But this is considered to be one of the major signs of Day of Judgment, that one of the major signs of Day of Judgment will be that there would be a beast, a dabba. And what would happen is that this beast would go around, it would speak to people, and when it realizes that this person is a mu'min and a believer, then this beast would then place a stamp on the believer's face, and then from that stamp there will be nur emitting from his face, a sign, a dalil that this person is a believer and a mu'min. And then this beast would go around the bad people, the evil people, and he will speak to them. And then obviously when he realizes that this person is not a believer, he's a disobedient person, he will then stamp their face, but this time zulma and darkness and tariki will be emitting from that person's face. So what this hadith is telling us here is that this is one of the signs of Day of Judgment, that a time will come when the wild animals would be speaking with human beings, telling human beings about this, telling human beings about that. So this is one of the minor signs of Day of Judgment. The next part of the hadith then goes on to say, وَحَتَّى تُكَلِّمَ الرَّجُلَ عَزَبَةُ صَوْتِهِ, that also another minor sign of Day of Judgment would be that time will come when a person's stick, a whip of a person, the corner, the edge of that whip or stick would speak to that person. And the hadith then goes on to say, وَشِرَاكُ نَعْلِهِ, that also another time will come before the end of time when a person's shoelaces would speak to him. So the shoelaces on your shoes, on your sandals and so on, they would speak to you. And then he goes on to say, وَيُخْبِرُهُ فَخِذُهُ بِمَا أَحْدَثَ أَهْلُهُ, that even a time will come when a person's thighs, ran, fakhizuhu means it's ran, its thighs, would speak to him. And then I've mentioned all these things like animals will be speaking to you, sticks will be speaking to you, shoelaces will be speaking. What would they speaking to you about? What they're speaking about qissa, kahaniyas, what they're going to be talking about. Then the next part of the hadith then says, bima ahdatha ahluhu, what your family are doing in your absence. What your family are doing in your absence. You've gone to work, you left your family at home, you left your wife at home, you left your children at home. So what are they doing at home? So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying that before the end of time, these things would testify, would tell you that your family is doing this, your wife is doing this, your husband is doing this, your children are doing that, your brothers are doing this, your mother is doing this, your father is doing that. All these things will tell you, will be informing you what is happening at home and what is happening in things which you have control over but you're not there. So it doesn't have to be at home. It could be anything. Say for example, if you own a company but you're not there physically all the time, So then what the staff, what the employees are doing whilst in your absence, are they betraying you? Are they like stealing from the till? Are they like coming on time? Are they doing the duty properly? Everything will be exposed or will be told to that particular person. Now what I've just explained here is what we call, it's not something, you may be thinking, oh, how can that be possible? You know, what kind of hadith is this? You know, sometimes when you speak to people, they'll say this, that what kind of hadith is this, a person's thigh speaking to you? Now remember, nothing is ba'id, nothing is difficult for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just always keep that in mind. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to do something, He could do it, blink of an eye, click of the fingers, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can manifest that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can make that happen. So never, na'udhu billah, doubt these types of hadiths. Sometimes, I'm sure if I was to say this hadith outside to any youth or any youngsters or people who are far away from Deen, they'll start laughing at me. They'll say, oh, Mufti Sahib, what are you talking about? No, we shouldn't be laughing at these types of hadiths. We shouldn't, na'udhu billah, think that this is not going to happen, because these things will happen. If we have our yaqeen on the words of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so our yaqeen should be, as soon as we hear these hadiths, we should straight away believe in it and do i'tiqad of it, to do tasdeeq of it, that these things would happen before the end of time. And as I was saying, that this is not something ba'id on Allah. As you know, for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, before he was announced to be a prophet, then the stones would speak to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Stones were giving glad tidings to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Trees, the leaves on the trees were giving Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam glad tidings about prophethood, about nubuwwat and so on. And we also hear stories of the awliyaullah and the pious servants of Allah, that sometimes they would speak to, grass would speak to them, trees would speak to them, leaves on the trees would speak to them, and so on. So why do all these things speak? Is quite clearly mentioned in the Holy Quran. وَإِن مِّن شَيْءٍ إِلَّا يُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِهِ, which means that every creation of Allah, they're always doing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's tasbih. Okay, so even the trees outside, the animals outside, the grass outside, they are all remembering Allah. They're doing their various zikr of Allah, various tasabih of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So again, this is not something ba'id or far-fetched that before the end of time, these things would be talking to us and speaking to us. So that's one hadith. Now the second hadith which I want to mention is a hadith which can be found in Sunan Ibn Majah, narrated by Abu Qatada radhiyallahu anhu, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said, Al-ayatu ba'd al-mi'atayn, which means that all these signs which are going to happen, this is in general, all the signs of Day of Judgment, whether they are minor or whether they are major, ba'd al-mi'atayn would happen or would start after 200 years. Ba'd al-mi'atayn. Now what this hadith, in this particular hadith, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is telling us that, all the signs which I mentioned, it's been a few weeks we've been looking at this topic, so many like, alcohol consumption will be great, zina will be great, all these things which people will be doing, sins, wagera, so many things which I mentioned over the past few weeks. In this hadith here, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying that all these signs of Day Judgment would start after 200 years. Now obviously the ulamas have kind of done ikhtilaf, that what do you mean by 200 years? Some ulamas have said that, 200 years se murad after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's death. After Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam left this world, then 200 years after, after the Sahaba's time, the Khairul Qurun's time, the Tabi'in's time, the Tabi Tabi'in's time, that's when these fitnas and these signs of Day of Judgment would slowly start appearing. Some of the ulamas have said that 200 years se murad yaha, 200 years from migration. Because remember, from migration, that's when the Islamic calendar starts. So 200 years after, that's when all these minor signs and slowly major signs are going to appear in the ummah of Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So there's some ikhtilaf regarding the signs here, but as I mentioned, we mentioned quite a few signs, minor signs, in particular Imam Mahdi coming, also other signs about sins and people disrespecting their parents, and all these kind of like mass punishment coming, people will be changed into animals, monkeys, these kind of things. So all these are minor signs which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in this particular hadith is saying that it will start after 200 years. Now the next hadith, the third hadith which I'm going to mention, is not actually linked with the chapter, but I'm mentioning it for two reasons. Number one is it's always good to listen to this hadith here and there, kabi kabar. Why? Because it rectifies our intention. And the second reason why I'm mentioning this particular hadith here is because the month of Ramadan is coming, and we should all gear ourselves, get ready for the month of Ramadan, make sure that we utilize this time or the blessed time during the month of Ramadan for the sake of Allah. Now this hadith, a very famous hadith narrated by Umar bin Khattab radhiyallahu anhu, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said, "Innamal a'malu bin niyat." The actions are according to intentions. Now this is a hadith which Imam Bukhari has mentioned at the very beginning of his Sahih al-Bukhari. It is also a hadith which other muhaddisins like Imam Nawawi has mentioned in his Riyaz al-Salihin. And the reason why muhaddisins and similarly other lecturers, other muhaddisins, whenever they start sabak or lesson or dars at the beginning of the year, they always mention this hadith. Why? So that the talib ilms, the students or the audience, they can correct their intention, and similarly the teacher or the muhaddis who's teaching the hadith can also correct his intention as well. That the students or the audience, their intention of coming, listening to the hadith, listening to the dars, should only be for the sake of Allah, for the pleasure of Allah. And similarly, the teacher who is teaching this hadith, his intention for teaching the hadith, it should not be for name, it should not be for fame, that people will talk about the muhaddis or the lecturer or the speaker, but his intention should be for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. So the student's intention should be for Allah, and also the teacher's intention should be for Allah. The audience intention should be for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the lecturer's or the speaker's intention should also be for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. Sometimes nowadays you have a lot of programs, and many of the programs afterwards they say, oh, refreshments or khana at the end and so on. And sometimes you hear people that they go to these programs with the intention, oh, there's going to be nice food at the end, there's going to be biryani at the end and so on. So obviously if your intention is for biryani, if your intention is for the khana and the roti afterwards, then you're just going to get no reward for coming. However, if your intention is for learning knowledge, acquiring ilm and so on, listening to hadith, because obviously being in the gathering of hadith majlis and Quran tafsir and zikr is so much barakah and blessing. So if you come for that intention, you get reward for that. If your intention is for the khana and for the biryani afterwards, then you're not going to get any reward for that. And that's why we see that many people, they come because their intention is the khana or the food afterwards, they don't really actually get anything from it. So any hadithi which are explained, any tafsirs which is done, we only get probably 2% of it or 5% of it, and the other 95% just goes away. Why? Because our intention tends to always be wrong. So this is very important, that we always correct our intention. Now going back to obviously the month of Ramadan, which is dawning upon us. So again, as I was saying yesterday, that we should try our best to do one Quran khatam during the month of Ramadan. But also at the same time, we should clean our intentions out as well. That when we are in the month of Ramadan, we're not here to please anyone besides Allah. Okay? Whatever a'mals we're doing, especially for the younger members of the audience, we're not here to please our father, our mother, that they're going to be nagging at us, they'll be telling us, or go to the masjid and so on. Our intention should be what? To please only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Obviously there'll be holidays, so obviously you'll be more at home. So obviously there may be certain things where parents are telling you to do this, and you're doing it like reading Quran or reading extra namaz or waking up for tahajjud. You're doing it not because you really want to do it, but you're doing it because your parents are forcing you. So don't do it because of parents. You're not here, obviously you're here to please your parents, don't get me wrong, but when it comes to a'mals and actions, then it should be only for the sake of Allah. Because remember, what I'm telling you about doing the Quran khatam and all these things, Remember, Allah is not in need of it. Allah doesn't need our Quran khatams. Allah doesn't need our fasting. Allah doesn't need us to be like fasting for 18 hours, 19 hours, so on. Allah doesn't need that. But remember, whatever we're doing it for our own selves. So always keep that in mind. Don't do any like ihsan jutlana that, oh, I'm doing it for this person, I'm doing it for that person. No. Oh, I'm doing it for Allah. Allah's going to be in need if I don't do it. No, Allah's not going to be like that. If you do it, then you're benefiting yourself. If you don't do it, then obviously the wabal and the punishment in the hereafter. So whatever we do, whatever amals we do, always think of it like have the good intention that it's for Allah, only for the pleasure of Allah, and we want to rectify ourselves, and we're doing it to please Allah, not to please any other soul, any other individual, any other person, only to please Allah. And inshallah, when we have that firm intention in our heart that whatever we want to do only for Allah, then inshallah you'll see like a good a gradual improvement in our tazkiyah, in our purification. Allah gives tawfiq to act on what has been said. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillah.